Hey guys, welcome back to Advocating World Government. And so just a few updates. Again, I'm not sure how many videos I'm posting, and please, if you do see this video, please check out my other videos. They do have consistent themes and views, and if you're dedicated or you'd like to pursue the ideas I follow more, please check out my content. And also please, if you can find my website, it's Advocating World Government. I even have a business page on Google if you want to find that. I also have a podcast, and I have a digital book called The World Government Manifesto, and also a physical copy of the book on Lulu Bookstore. I always want to make that announcement right there. But so today, in school, obviously, because I'm in politics, we've started to more talk about Indigenous rights and Indigenous politics, and even the UN has an Indigenous rights and declarations in their content. And I'm from Canada, and technically we're not really following that, but we are letting more Indigenous people have the rights. And if you saw recently, there was news about Quebec losing in the Supreme Court against them wanting to control the Indigenous welfare system in Quebec, since they saw there was more a provincial issue. But because of Indigenous rights, the Indigenous people are allowed to control their own social welfare system. And it made me, if you ever watched Star Trek The Next Generation, an episode was about, now of course it said the Indigenous people learned from aliens, but one of it was this Indigenous tribe that was purposely used technology that was put on them to keep them away from the other society so that they could live their own way and not be disturbed. Unlike what happened here, where we disturbed their way and we took over their lives. And I think, as I've talked about in world government, it wouldn't really be, like, I want it to be more of a choice, in that you don't have to live in this world that I've come up with, and of course the majority will come up with. It won't just be me, but these are my ideas I'm basing it off of. And what I think is that is a great system, because obviously I've talked about defense. If we have people living outside of it. But if it's just Indigenous people who will, of course, that's what they want to go back to anyways. And the problem is they can't, because we've taken areas. But in my solution, where we just have the circles and maybe a few little land outside of it, or having historical areas and artifacts and archaeological areas. But other than that, because the plan is we'd get rid of everything after taking photos and for posterity reasons, and to remember what life was like before, maybe use it in simulations. But generally, we'd do that, and we'd get rid of everything, and we start with our things. Of course, we'd leave archaeological evidence out in maybe a few areas just for historical purposes. But other than that, the land would be back to what it once was. And of course, we try and leave, as I said, the society would be vegan and be self-reliant, our society, so we wouldn't need to rely on outside resources, and hopefully that will allow the animal life to flourish so Indigenous people can go back to their ways. And of course, we'd make sure, hopefully by then we haven't completely destroyed the wildlife, make sure it's all okay. And then there's people living in that society. And then there's Indigenous people living outside, where we don't have to worry about risks to security, as they will be living their own peaceful lives with really no modern technology like the old ways, fire, bows and arrows, things like that. And so then everybody will be peaceful and content. And I think that's a great way to view things. And of course, if people want to leave our society, they can. But the thing is, if you've heard of the state of nature, it's usually a consensus. People decide to be in it, and that's how it happened in the past. Now, I also think people have a choice not to do it, but for the Indigenous members or people outside of the area, the thing is, we have to make sure, because society will be genetically engineered, will have a different lifestyle, different education, and make sure to have the best society possible, it wouldn't be possible for people to come into that society. It's a closed off society. You, of course, visitors, if they want to visit, of course, under closed circumstances, like maybe anthropological reasons, like studying the culture, learning different things. But of course, we don't want too much contamination, and we don't want them to be contaminated off of us. But I think it's good to have a partnership. But again, they can never live there because it's a huge different society and it would be whole different. And of course, as I've said, society will be very technological based. We'll probably have neural interfaces, AR, VR. We'd have basically everything, try and make our lives as easier as possible. And it would be a very communal society, so we'd have that in common. And we'd have an augmented democracy. And that might be hard for them to understand, which is why it would be different. But I do think it's a great idea because a lot of people, they really argue about Indigenous rights and Indigenous cultures. And even today, we've had untouched cultures and we're staying away from them because we know what has happened before. And of course, we're not on any natural resources that we need. And I think that's the main part too. If we're self-reliant, we don't have to worry about taking their needs away and using their needs, as it would be as they could have their own things. And of course, it would also be a very, people then would very look different from the original people. It'd kind of be like a historical thing left of what people used to look like. Because as I've said, people would look a lot different through genetic editing, making sure, and kind of an homogenizing effect. Because if you've ever looked at psychology, it's generally one group versus the other. And I believe the only way to make peace last a lot longer is for everybody to be very similar. So we don't have to worry about fights between groups because there really will be no groups. Everyone will basically look the same and probably have the same beliefs, as that's what they will be taught. Of course, it's fine to have your own beliefs, but generally, when people look alike, it becomes a lot easier. So of course, people would look different and maybe genetically enhance things for the certain job they might be in might be done after, maybe certain things that will benefit us, longer lives, different things we can do. Well, I think that's very specific in that sense, so it would be a bit different from people. But again, I just wanted to bring this up, and maybe this will also help Indigenous people even today, where we make sure that they can have their own culture and their own way of life, and they don't have to rely on us anymore, and they can be self-reliant as well. So yeah, just wanted to mention that, guys, and bring my ideas forth. Please check out my other ideas, check out my podcast, check out my website and blogs. Thank you.